This episode of Art, Music, and Technology is brought to you by Recording Magazine. Based out of Boulder, Colorado, Recording Magazine provides information for recording artists, budding engineers, and longtime professionals as well. You can check out their work at recordingmag.com. Now enjoy our podcast. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in again this week. This week I have the great pleasure of getting the chance to meet Anthony Mattana. He is the founder and CEO of Hooke Audio, which kind of caught my attention at the recent NAMM show. It caught my attention for a couple of reasons. First of all, they had an outdoor booth, which, since I'm from the Minneapolis area, the idea of being outdoors in January is kind of funny, but in LA it makes a lot more sense. They had a booth, and they were like plugging people into their system to check it out. And their system's pretty unique. It's a ear mounted binaural system, but it works wirelessly with your phone. It has all kinds of other stuff. We'll have Anthony talk about it. So with that, I'm going to say hello to Anthony. Hey, Anthony, how's it going?
Hey, Darwin. How's it going? Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it. So let's start off by having you explain a little bit about Hooke Audio and particularly about the products that you're selling.
Totally. So at Hooke Audio, our big mission is changing the way people record the world. Personally, my more personal mission is killing mono audio on our phones. So what we have done is invented the world's first Bluetooth headphones that are capable of capturing wireless binaural audio over Bluetooth to Android and iOS devices. We've also invented a cable that, when plugged into our Hooke Verse binaural recording headphones, can turn the Verse into a wired microphone that will allow you to capture wired 16-bit 48K WAV files to field recorders, DSLR, GoPros, anything that doesn't have Bluetooth. Now, we record wirelessly over Bluetooth using a proprietary codec that we've built from the ground up that also allows us to stream dual-channel 16-bit 48K WAV files over Bluetooth to iOS and Android devices. There's a reason you've never seen any Bluetooth microphones on the market before, because there isn't a good Bluetooth recording codec. So in addition to our headphones that are able to capture this audio, we have this codec that allows us to stream. We also have the world's first 3D audio recording mobile apps for Android and iOS that allow you to record straight to your phone, edit the content, apply filters, even share it within a public feed in the app. So a full mobile binaural 3D audio platform for, again, changing the way people record on their phones.
Right, and what kind of price point does this thing come in at?
The Hooke Verse retails for $239. We sell it on our site and through Amazon. And when you purchase it, it comes basically with everything: your recording cable, 6 different size ear tips in silicone and memory foam, a pair of windscreens to go over the mics, which is super important for anyone outdoors, recording, action enthusiasts, charging cable, carrying case. Even our shipping box converts into a little cardboard dummy head that you can put the Verse on if you don't want to wear them during your recording. So it's a full sort of setup plugin. Yeah, it's just sort of a fun thing. My good friend Jim designed it, and we call it the Jim head. Nice. People really love that.
That's pretty cool. The idea of it being a wireless microphone, and particularly one that can handle 2-channel and has any kind of fidelity at all, is actually kind of surprising. And you say that you developed your proprietary codec. What exactly is the trick necessary to make that happen?
Yeah, definitely. So when you work in the world of Bluetooth, there's a lot of off-the-shelf Bluetooth codecs that allow for these devices to work. A very, very common Bluetooth codec that almost all headphones and speakers use on the market is called A2DP. And if they don't use A2DP, they use aptX, which is a higher, sampling rate codec.
Okay.
Now, these off-the-shelf Bluetooth codecs, what they do is they allow that phone to stream multiple channels of audio from the phone to a device, which is why we have Bluetooth headphones and speakers and all these things. And they're also set up to receive a single channel of audio, mono audio, but it's optimized for the human voice. It's around 3 kilohertz to 5 kilohertz.
Right.
So that's why you have the headphones with the microphone. So there's never been a device that said, hey, we've got 2 channels of really high quality audio and we want to push it to that phone. The phone doesn't know how to work with that. They've never been set up that way. It's not set up in the OS. So we've built this codec that allows us to do it. And on the phone side, all it would need is like a simple line of code to integrate into its operating system to use the native camera app. But instead, it doesn't have it, so we use these mobile apps that make the handshake with our codec when it comes in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
Now let's talk for people. I mean, people can go to your website, which is Hooke Audio, HOOKE Audio. People can go there and take a look at it. But can you just like really quickly describe what these headphones and microphones, how they fit on your head? And because I actually tried them at the show, and it was actually pretty interesting because they weren't that invasive at all.
You know, they're designed to really function like a sport headphone, right? The mics in your ears are incredibly sensitive. So you can't have any kind of cable noise. You can't have any sort of interference from any of the apparatus during recording because you're going to hear it, right? So they look like a standard sort of pair of sport headphones. You've got an earbud that goes in the ear, and then you have a memory wire that wraps around the back of the ear that goes to a module. And there's a module that sits behind both the left and right ear. On the left side, it's the biggest battery we can literally put on a human head without the FDA thinking we built a bomb, because it's super important, but it's a huge battery because you're getting like 10 to 11 hours of continuous record. And the right side is the electronics. Then there's a cable that connects the modules from behind the head. So you can pop them off, put them around your neck, or you put them right in there and you're good to go. But they have to be, accessible, they have to be portable, they have to be durable, and they have to be, secure to the head.
Right. Now, did I hear you say that it was like 10 to 11 hours of recording time?
Yeah, so we get about 11 to 12 hours of playback and about 10 to 11 hours of continuous binaural streaming. As far as I see, when I developed this and I said, look, if someone's going to buy this and take it to Coachella or Lollapalooza and the verse dies before the headliner goes on, I don't have a business.
Right.
Like, I straight up do not have a business.
Right.
So what I tell people is that your phone's battery will die 3 times before the verse does. Mm-hmm. The units that we were using at NAMM and we were demoing for 12 hours a day for 4 days straight, we charged each of those once during the show. It was a big important factor when I developed this. I come from a sound design and recording background, and I know what battery is like, so I factored that in.
Yeah, let's talk about that background a little bit, because I know when we had a brief discussion at the show, you'd kind of described yourself as coming from a kind of unique background, and how that informed how you make hardware. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Most of my training in audio is coming from being a theatrical sound designer. I've been in New York for the last 6 or 7 years before I started Hooke Audio, working as a sound designer and composer for theater. So I used to make the sound effects for the Broadway musicals, and when I wasn't working on the musicals, I was touring around the country writing original music and sound for plays. And writing music and writing audio for theaters, whether they're 200 seat and then they move to 800 or they're 20 seat, is a very unique type of creating sound, right? You're very, very in tune and sort of attentive to how sound interacts in live spaces. So immersive audio has always sort of been at the forefront of how I've made and how I really think about sound. And when I was working in theater, I was very frustrated. It's probably not that surprising that, I was coming up against this wall where both my audiences and my collaborators, the people responsible for the art, had very limited knowledge about the power that like really good sound can bring in storytelling. They didn't really understand it. They didn't really see how they could use it. The director would go to the costume designer and the lighting designer, and they would say, they talk about color temperature and saturation and brightness and contrast and all these things. And then they'd come over to the sound table and they'd speak to me and they'd say, can we just put like a whoosh in there? Like, let's just end the act with a big old whoosh. We'll do a wind blow. We'll be good to go. And it's like, I felt like I was a wind blow man living in a flat sound world. And I'm thinking here, and it's like, I can't even get my audiences that care about sound. The problem is the directors and the producers who are cutting my sound cues don't either. Right. So it dawned on me. It's like, why are they so focused visually? And I think, like anyone, these directors or these producers that go home at night, they got a dimmer on the chandelier above their dining room tables. They've got that little green box on their phone that allows them to focus in on a specific element when they take a photo. They have these really, well-designed consumer visual tools in their consumer products, right? But when it comes to recording sound, you just like throw a Hail Mary. You just like open the mic. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to capture this video of this Rolling Stones concert. And it's going to sound like a dump truck driving through a nitroglycerin plant because I couldn't even adjust the mic gain during the recording. Yet I could focus. I could adjust the brightness. I could adjust the temperature. I could do all these things. And it's like, if we don't give consumers the ability to just change a little bit about how they record, I'm going to keep making wind blows in theater until the day I die. So it's like, I have to make a consumer-friendly device that gets people to be creative with this so I can stop making wind blows. And I was so frustrated by it, coming from a theater background, that I decided to launch a consumer electronics company. And that's where it came from, a pure desire for people to care about sound. And it has to start with them being creative. We have all these amazing solutions that let us consume great audio, got really nice headphones, got really nice Sonos speakers of the new Apple HomePod, but sound has to go through a microphone before it goes through a speaker. And that's what we have to tackle first before we hit on any of these speakers systems.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. Now, before we actually talk more about the mic, I want to talk a little bit about the theatrical sound, because I'm a little curious. I've never really done any theatrical stuff before, but I wonder if one of the problems is that most people, when they think about like sound that goes along with a play, all they can think of is sort of like radio plays, where a guy honks a horn or does something like that, and it's not really conducive to sort of like the subtle use of audio, like say we would hear in a movie soundtrack, right?
Totally. And when it comes to musicals, and why I don't normally work on musicals or when I was in theater is because it's a lot of technical reinforcement. It's about making things sound good. There's not a lot of art that comes from it. When I was making sound effects for musicals, like on the Motown musical, I was, putting in the sound cue that was like the record drop, the needle on the record that was like the fuzz that came from it. It's like, very utilitarian effects. But, I've done shows like on the Mountaintop at Arena Stage in D.C. that have this entire sort of 10-minute ending montage at the end. If anyone's ever seen that play, there's this big collage of things that happens where he gets shot into the future and sees the future. And we did this massive sound core with all these, or soundscape with all these samples and these cues that happen and they trigger and they fire and he talks over them and he talks under them. And it's this massive moment of light and sound that the actors sort of, interact with on stage in this moment. That's where a lot of my passion lied with that. And, sound design for theater has only sort of picked up and has sort of, formed this way in the last, say, 10 to 15 years. They had a Tony Award for sound design. They actually got rid of it because the Tony committee couldn't judge the awards. There was a huge, criticism from that, and a bunch of people rose up to fight that, and they actually brought it back. But plays are where sound can get really creative. And, most of the music that you hear in plays is written by the sound designer. So it's all, it's all created from the computer. It's all set up on a computer where a soundboard operator is up in a booth, is ready to cue it. And then they cue those sound cues from a computer, just like you would a lighting designer.
Sure. Interesting. So now getting into the idea of binaural sound. First of all, what is it about that work with theater that made you move towards playing with creating a mic? I mean, that seems still like a bit of
because we use binaural microphones constantly.
Oh, really?
So my job a lot with the Broadway musicals was setting up the $9,000 Neumann head, in row E, seat 17,
of course,
to record the show for archival purposes.
Right.
And that's all they were using it for, was archival, basically to record the show because it's, it's struck after, 2 months of running.
Right.
So, they use these big dummy heads. And there was one moment where I was sitting on a Broadway house, sitting right next to a dummy head in the seat next to me, completely alone in a Broadway theater. And I'm like, it's me and a dummy head right now. And I'm looking at this dummy head and I'm thinking, use your head, you freaking dummy. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I'm literally at the same head spot as this dummy head and I'm sitting here doing this thing.
Right.
It's costing me $9,000. I've got all these cables going into these connectors. It's absurd. So we used to use these constantly and you'd see how amazing it was. And everyone would listen back and they'd be like, wow, this is incredible. And I'm thinking how this one last step is missing to say, You can do it too. You can totally do it too, but you can't with the current hardware out there. The binaural audio microphone companies, the bigger ones that are these expensive, have made dummies out of all of us. It's a mannequin head with microphones in it. It can't be $8,000. But the only customer that's buying it are Broadway houses with sound budgets of $500,000. So it's like, there's your market, there's your business. But the reality is our ears do all the work. It's just placing the microphone in the right spot. So I had firsthand experience with these mics. I used all of them. I watched single-handedly the reaction that people had hearing this and thought, this is absurd. It's such an amazing consumer experience. It's so freaking easy, right? All you got to do is put on a pair of headphones. You could open a YouTube link. You could open a SoundCloud link. Any headphones or speakers will allow you to hear binaural audio. Don't you think it should be just as easy to make the binaural audio? It has to. Any major format shift had devices that allow us to consume as easily as create. And so that's where the Verse kind of comes in.
Right. Interesting. For our listeners are largely going to be artists and musicians and people who are creatives by nature anyway. First of all, so at $239, how good of a microphones are these going to actually be? And I mean, are they going to be able to be something that people can bank on from a creative standpoint?
I'm going to be biased because I invented this, and I'm going to say they sound incredible for the price, right? But there are hundreds and hundreds of videos on YouTube posted by our customers, people that I have not paid in any way, or simply customers who have reviewed the product, who have made their own content. I always tell people to let that be the judge. YouTube is very important for us, right? Because hearing is believing, and you got to hear the content. So we, on our own YouTube channel, have thousands of videos and playlists that we've either collected from our customers who have made content, to stuff that we've made on our own, to comparison videos to the other binaural microphones out there on the market, to really, give people an understanding of what this really sounds like. Honestly, I would also have a lot of people review our press. We've had some big press from some very sort of more sound, music, niche-orientated articles, who are all about the recording quality, and, judge their reaction, see what they say about it. And they say, for the price, this is incredible. This is what we need. So the factor is that most musicians still today, or journalists, are still using the built-in mic on their phone. Right. So it's like, if you're going to buy a new pair of headphones, use these as headphones, but please stop recording in mono audio. Do it some way better that allows your listeners to be there.
Right. From your perspective, one of the things that I'm interested in right now is that there is actually kind of a lot of discussion about 3D audio, but a lot of it tends to be focused around how you're going to experience audio inside of like an Oculus Rift headset or something like that, which is kind of a different thing. But it has this real kind of problem, which is that you have to be outfitted with $800 worth of stuff in order to experience the thing, right? By focusing on binaurals, you are doing something where a standard set of headphones really gives you pretty much the full experience. Not even pretty much, it just does, right?
The same, I think, problem facing VR video is the same thing that's facing VR audio, right? The apparatus in which allows you to consume that content is a big leap for most consumers. It's a big sacrifice and commitment that people need to do. And just like any technology, it will go down and it will become more accessible and affordable over time, right? But right now, it is still this sort of reserved sort of onboarding experience. Here's how I see binaural audio to fit into this, right? So a lot of people will use a microphone called an ambisonics microphone that allows for head tracking audio upon playback and a sort of VR experience. So if you made, ambisonics audio and you put it on the headset and you turned your head, you'd have that audio move with you. Great, amazing experience. Going to cost you $5,000 to watch like Donkey Kong and do that. Who cares? GoPro did something really interesting with the first camera that they had, because I heard a lot of people talk about VR video when they first started watching it on headsets and saying this, oh, it's like GoPro video that you can move your head in. They're like, it's like GoPro video that I can move around in. And GoPro was a very important first step for a lot of VR video, because it was this sort of immersive POV type of format storytelling that allowed you to really see the picture, but you couldn't move. It was like a passive VR. Audio needs that first step. audio needs the same sort of thing that GoPro did for video, and that's binaural. Because binaural is a passive VR experience that doesn't require any onboarding on the consumption side to experience it. Just like a GoPro video can be put into YouTube and span your field of vision, so can a binaural audio file. But if I can't get people to care about binaural and buy a binaural microphone and start making in binaural and see why binaural matters, why the heck would they ever care about a $900 Ambisonics microphone?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's got to have the same step of sort of education and knowledge that the video did as well. And our biggest obstacle is getting people and makers and creators to understand why binaural matters. Why record this way? Why do it this way? And it's to say, well, look, your listeners are already listening to your work on headphones. Most of the content you're making is from POV perspective. All you're trying to do is put your listeners in the room with you, to have them be transported in your head so you can share them your story. It's a no-brainer. If you're going to do immersive video, do the audio with it. And again, it doesn't have to have a VR headset to listen back. I don't care if you listen to binaural audio on your mono soundbar of your speaker, it's still better than the built-in mic. Right. It's just insane. We're walking around the world with like a hand over one ear. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting perspective. And lately, I, like so many people I know, have been doing more location recording work. And that's one of those things where you very quickly you get out in nature and you have a microphone and you put your headset on, and it's always good. I think for people who are getting started in location recording, they should plan on having abject failure for the first dozen times they go out, right? Because you learn all of these things that don't matter in the studio that become a big deal when you get out in the field. Like, hey, if you have a microphone that's mounted in your recorder, the recorder body is going to have a resonance, and now you're going to have this ring, every time anything touches the body of that mic. So, one whole recording session is going to go in a tank because it's got this broad, bad ting sound in it, right? And then the next time you go out, you have your headphones in, you're enjoying it, but you're like, it's funny because it seems like, boy, it's kind of loud. And then you'll bring it home and you realize, oh, well, the cable kept on banging into the, just scraping lightly against the microphone, which ended up, in the studio now, sounds like you're hitting your face with a shovel, right?
Yep.
There's all this kind of like detailing that goes in. One of the things I think that you had to do with the design of this is you probably had to try and make it so that it took less than a dozen experiences to get a good recording, right?
Totally. It takes one because they're headphones. You hear exactly what you're recording. And not only are you able to adjust the level of what you're hearing, but you can adjust the gain of your recording. It's all within one device. Every microphone should have the ability to hear what it's recording immediately. And that's the beauty of putting mics in headphones. They just do that.
So do you have a direct feedback from the mic into the headphone, or does it have to go into the app and back out?
No, if it went into the app and back out, we'd have severe latency.
Right.
No, it's all amplified right from on board in the mics. It's a transparent hearing function that allows you to basically have earplugs in and not get hit by a bus because you can't hear anything if you're walking, which is super important. Our apps are also fully accessible to the blind. Blind people have been using binaural microphones for decades, but they've never had an ability to do it on their phone. So we partnered with the National Federation for the Blind and Perkins School for the Blind to make the app fully accessible to people, visually impaired to use it. I've had blind people tell me I can finally capture my home videos on my smartphones now with the Verse, because it's a camcorder for them. And so things like that, being able to hear what you're recording and to be able to adjust what you're hearing is a matter of life or death for these people. And it's what everyone should have.
I hadn't really thought about the accessibility opportunity here, but that's pretty huge because
a recording that lacks spatialization, that lacks, directionality is completely useless to them.
Right.
And it was interesting. It was a huge challenge for us. Like, how do you design mic gain adjustment on a flat touchscreen app device? I encourage everyone to check out our blog. It's hookeaudio.com/blog. I have a bunch of articles about how we design for the blind, a lot of stories from blind recordists who are using it, but it sort of dives into how we made this completely accessible for the blind, because it's essentially 4 products, right? It's one product when it's on iOS. One product when it's on Android, then one product when it's for blind people on iOS, and one is Android and iOS.
Right,
I mean, it
right.
works completely differently. When the microphone's clipped, the phone vibrates so that they know. They have the ability to begin and end a recording by pressing the tactile power button on the Verse instead of through the app, so if they can't find it, which sighted people can do with the Verse as well. But yeah, there's a lot of factors in there. Also, when I was designing this and I was seeking the guidance of like golden ear producers to hear the clarity and the microphones, the best feedback and the best ears I've ever experienced, and I've worked in professional audio with film and theater for years, are blind people. They have the most incredible ears, literally, like instinctually. Right? That's what happens when you lose one of your sense, another is heightened.
Right.
They have incredible ears. I will never send a mix to a golden ears producer again. I will send it to one of the blind people that I've met through this journey because they have the ability to hear anything. They found things that no one else I know with eyes has.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Really quick, if you don't mind, if I comment what you're saying, going out and recording. What I think is interesting about this product and what it's causing people to do, we've had really amazing visual camera tools on our phones. And because of that, we pay a lot of attention to what we're seeing in the world. I think it's caused us to take note and look for more of those things. I gave these 10 units to really big photographers who haven't done any sound recording to get their feedback on what they sort of experience going out when they go to shoot wearing them. Right. And they said, what the camera did for me to make me kind of open up my eyes and pay attention to what I was seeing, your microphones are doing. Because before we weren't paying attention to what we hear because we know even if we tried to record it, it wouldn't sound like we just heard it. But because now we have the ability in our pocket to actually capture what we hear, we're trying to pay more attention to what we hear to like capture that. You know what I mean? It works the same way.
Sure.
So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, you've gone from being a guy working in the theater to founding a hardware company. I mean, that is kind of a mind-boggling jump, right? Because if nothing else, the sort of like financial stake it takes to become a designer and producer of hardware, that's got to be a pretty big hit. How painful of a trek was that? How long did it take for you to get from like, okay, I'm going to try this to I've got a product? How long did that take you?
The beginning of 2014, I had a prototype relatively working that worked kind of wirelessly and kind of wired to be able to sort of transmit this to phones and wired devices. In the fall of 2014, I launched a Kickstarter for it to even gauge to see if enough people would be interested in, something like this. Mm-hmm. The other reason why I did the Kickstarter is because I knew early on in 2014 that immersive audio and 3D audio, it doesn't really factor out into ones and zeros for a VC on a spreadsheet, right? The guys that have the money that want to fund something like this, they're not going to see any money in 3D audio because there isn't a guaranteed market. There isn't a prospering market. A lot of things hadn't been de-risked. So I said, maybe if I can de-risk the customer a bit and see what the demand is for something like this, it's a free, totally painless way to see if I'm about to, the next 4 years of my life are about to be a waste or something worth it. And the Kickstarter did fantastic. The Kickstarter, tailored into a lot of, audio professionals and makers for a long time who knew what binaural audio was and hated that it cost $7,000. So the Kickstarter did well, and it did well enough for me to sort of get the log rolling, not enough to get big funding from VCs, but enough to sort of get individualized funding from friends and family to basically get us to finish the product, to launch it, and go from there. So that was a thing in and of itself. I raised a good amount of money through friends and family to sort of push it this way. I mean, the big thing, I don't have any sort of engineering background. I don't have any coding experience. When I started this, I thought PCB was like a cleaning product. I didn't know it was a PCB board. A lot of things that I wasn't, sort of attuned to, but what came back to it and at the end of it, about all of this is I knew what this needed to be. I knew exactly what this needed to be. I knew exactly what this could be. And I knew that if I could make it and I could make it this way and show it and put it on someone's head, they could see it too. And that's what drove me to, enter so many black, dark quarters that I have absolutely no experience in whatsoever. From managing people to managing assembly, I've done it pretty much all on my own. I flew to China 2 years ago and met with 10 factories completely on my own, trying to figure out how this works. And then I flew back to China at the beginning of 2017, lived there for 2.5 months and oversaw mass production of our first run completely on my own, not even with a translator, because I couldn't freaking afford it. That's where I'm in on this, and this is how I know I can make this. And because I've known how this can work, that's why it's here today. We launched the Kickstarter. We do very well with it. In 2016 or 2015, mid 2015, we've got everything pretty good and ready. Like, the product's working, it's all there. The mobile apps, we go to submit them to the app stores. Google Play Store that submits the app takes it back in like 7 days and was like, great, this is good, have fun, do whatever. Apple comes back and says, oh, this is a mobile app that requires a hardware. This hardware needs to be made for iPhone certified. This has to be an MFI certified product.
Oh.
And then for the next year and a half, 2 years of my life, I think just about 2 years, from mid-2015 to the end of 2016, I went through Apple made for iPhone certification journey. One of our biggest and most populated and commented on blog posts is a full, complete guide on how to get your Bluetooth product MFI certified on my blog, because I went through every step of it. And it is just as difficult and just as arbitrary and frustrating as everyone says it is. Everyone has gone through war with these guys. It takes forever. So when you get out, no one shares any of their secrets. They don't want anyone to have an edge. I said, screw that. This is not the kind of community I want to be around. And I wrote a huge big. It was like, no one would help me, so I'm going to help someone here. But yeah, that process is totally insane. They provide no resources, no support. There's no direct contact to call. It's a single email bot. That's the only way you can communicate. You do a little bit of work. They take 2 to 3 months to respond. When they do, it's a simple note that you have to adjust a line of code. You send back and you wait another 2 months. Oh, and it almost feels like it's a way of bleeding startups to not be able to get it because they just can't withstand. So I had to move out of New York. I moved back in with my parents. I lived in their basement. I constantly worked on MFI for a year and a half, and it was finally able to get it. Now, the craziest part about it, at the end of it all, they were like, fine, we'll release the app into the App Store, but we don't really consider this a headset because it doesn't have a 3-button array. Good to be the king, tons of moats to fight through. You got to find a way to swim through each of the moats. I got through it, but that was the biggest arduous process of this all. You think making the products difficult? No, that's the easiest thing. It's getting through the bureaucratic, business, everything to get it through certifications. You learn that certifications and all these things are just like roadblocks put up by another company to try to keep their competitive edge over the market.
Right.
But I got through. Because I went all in, and I've sacrificed pretty much my whole life for the last 3.5 years to get where we are today.
Wow.
And then we launched the product in the summer of last year, and we saw 4 direct competitors come out right after us.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So, yeah, it's been totally crazy. You think if you went into this knowing what would happen, you wouldn't. But sometimes you just get too far into it, and you're in it, and you're like, well, not getting out. So,
yeah, right. Yeah. Well, it just seems like this really has a passion for you. But I got to tell you, one of the things I was going to ask was like how you assembled the team that did all this stuff. It sounds like assembling the team was pretty much like patting yourself on the back and saying, "Let's go." I mean, it sounds like
it's
you
a bit had there. There's definitely, there were definitely people that helped. There were definitely me and a handful of engineers who did all this, and it was just me being on the internet. Everyone has been hired through the internet. I've used freelance hiring sites that have been my godsend. Upwork.com is this amazing site to hire freelancers. And I had a very good advisor early on that told me there's no reason to hire anyone on as a full-time employee from the beginning. Everyone is an independent contractor because no one will stay. No one will care about this as much as you do. Find a ragtag team, scrap it together. The internet is your friend. I mean, yeah, I launched a hardware and software business in the year 2018 and have raised all the money to do it essentially straight through my cell phone in my parents' basement. Like, it's totally run that way. So that's like the tool you have to use. Yeah.
Well, that's unbelievable, but also that's kind of hopeful for people that want to take something on. I mean, because let's face it, a lot of times working on audio stuff it has to start off as a passion project. Otherwise, there are not the indicators. There's not the roadmap that tells you, it's it's not like you're making military tooling here, right? Where it's like clear that,
right.
If you get something that a general likes, you're going to sell 10 bazillion of them, right?
Right.
Rather, like, well, if you are successful enough to capture the attention of the marketplace, you're going to be selling this to people who are scraping money already. So on the surface,
Yes.
it seems like kind of a tough sled to get into play on it, but it just definitely seems like you've got the passion necessary to pull that off.
A lot of people will say nothing great comes in under 3 years, right? And if it does, it means the market is already validated and there's already products out there. If you really want to do something, if you really want to make it new, it's going to take 3 to 5 years. And depending on the industry, the 3 years might be building the product. The other 3 might be just getting the customer. The reality here, though, and I'm like a perfect walking example of it, and I try to express it to as many entrepreneurs as I can, you just have to keep doing it. Like I was the kid waving this 3D audio flag, in the corner since early 2014 when, the Google ad spend on that word was like a penny. Now it's at like $3. You have to keep saying it. You have to just keep saying it. And if you keep saying it, eventually people are like, well, he keeps saying it, so he must be doing something. All right, I'll click the blog post.
Right.
We have this tendency to just like fizzle out to like, especially when you're in the internet, it's all this content being pushed. I mean, I got to post blog posts 7 times in a day before I know someone reads it. You have to be persistent. And, look, if you talk to me during this Apple MFI certification process, it was morbid because it was like, I made the product. I know this works. The product is beautiful. The app works. I'm going to die because a big business doesn't want me to succeed. That's when I felt this feeling of like, even as hard as you work, even if you put everything into it, there's still going to be someone that doesn't care or doesn't allow it. But the reality is if you keep pushing it and you find a way, they can't not allow it.
Right.
And so it did that, and I kept at it, and I kept doing it, and it shows. It really, really does. Now, granted, I'm still trying to educate the market on binaural. I'm still trying to see why it matters. I've now got a direct competitor in Sennheiser, the Sennheiser Ambio headset, which is a wired binaural mic with headphones. It only works on iPhone. It's completely less versatile than ours. It also costs a fortune, but they got $1 million to spend a month on marketing.
Right.
So, you feel like, oh my God, Sennheiser just rented a double-decker bus in London and they're showing their product. How can I compete with that? I can. There's places that Sennheiser isn't. There's all these things. So every time when you feel like there's something bigger on it, you just have to say that you can, and there's going to be people that you're it. And if you keep doing it, it does. Every time I've had so many, moments where I've done everything, and it's like, I wish I did something wrong. It's actually that I did everything right, and there's these bigger powers. You push through the powers. You really can. It might take you a little longer, but you can, and I'm proof of it.
So when someone like Sennheiser comes along, though, with a competing product, I mean, other than just saying, well, I already got my friggin' money poured in it, so I have to stick it out, how do you basically get or maintain an advantage over them when you are up against bucket loads of money?
So, I mean, first of all, our product has a serious advantage over it. Like I said, it's wired. It only works on iOS. Doesn't come with a carrying case. Doesn't have windscreens. Doesn't have anything. We're compatible on every device. We're wireless. We do everything. We're much more versatile. So there's a confidence that I can instill to know it's like their product isn't better. They're just known more. I mean, it's crazy. It's been a multi-chapter journey with them, right? So when they first launched, they acted like I didn't exist. They acted like they knew nothing about me. And they did all these paid sponsorships and these paid posts and these paid ads and paid reviews claiming Sennheiser to be the world's first 3D audio product, the world's first 3D audio recording headphones, which of course they weren't. So I bought a ticket to every conference that Sennheiser was demoing at, like AES and CES, went into the booth and recorded it with my headphones, with Hooke Verse, and was like, hey, guys, I'm wearing it. This is doing it. You guys don't even have it out here because I know you haven't shipped yet. Then I wrote a blog post about it, and I showed the videos of what I was doing there, and I showed receipts of shipping. Then I started, commenting and reaching out to every single journalist that was making these claims, collecting the data on it, getting them to openly admit in text format that they were being paid to write these reviews and make these claims, even though they didn't do any research. And I wrote a blog post about that. I then sent 3 units to the CEOs and founders of Daniel and Andreas Sennheiser and Hugh Kremering, the head of their Ambio 3D audio line. I physically sent them units with tracking, and I have a shipping confirmation that says they received it. So it's like, I know you got the unit. Let's talk. What's the feedback? I've spoken on the phone with Hugh Kremering a couple times. We've talked about them making the claim to first. You'll notice they don't really make that claim anymore. That's mainly because I've trolled the heck out of journalists in doing all this. There was a post that recently came up this week. I had to reach out to them. They took it down. So yeah, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of like they're just acting like we don't exist, even though I've spoken with them directly. But they know that they have a lot more money than me. They can push it. But the reality here, what's happening is the biggest obstacle all of us companies are facing is, again, what you're saying in the beginning. Why does binaural audio matter? Why should people use it? Because if we can tackle that objective and people do care about making binaural audio and they Google what is binaural audio and they see the Sennheiser and they go, Jesus, I want to use this on my Android phone, they buy my product. Right. So what's that phrase, all boats rise with the tide sort of thing? I need more of that. I need more right. people creating and capturing in binaural because I've got the product that will work for all of it. And, and I can be places where Sennheiser isn't. They can't be everywhere. There's going to need to be competitors in the space, and that's good, and that's fine. And I have no issue with what they're doing, and I'm thankful for what they're doing. When they make claims about being the first and all that stuff, it's kind of weird, but it's part of the process. That's a great thing. I want Sony to be putting binaural mics in their headphones. I want every company to have binaural mics in there.
Because, yeah, it makes it so that people start expecting that, right? I can see that.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Now, it's interesting, though, because what it seems like, too, is you are kind of embracing something that we're seeing again. For a long time, this was gone in the music gear world or the sound gear world, which is sort of like the punk businesses, right? There was a while where everything kind of just got super corporatized, and then all of a sudden, whether it's, if you're into synthesizers, it's all these nuts doing modular synths, right? If you're into guitars, right. It's people that are doing hand-painted pedals or whatever. And, in the case of audio gear, it's things like peculiar microphones, right? And it's sort of like basically, not only is it the microphone, but it's people getting in front of you and saying, I dare you to tell me why this isn't great. And I have to say, I really respect that about what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I very much appreciate it. And it comes from a place of just knowing that if people put this on, if I can get it on a person's head, no one hears this and goes, nah, it's okay. Like, whatever. Like, no one's like, nah. Everyone's like, holy crap, I didn't know this existed. And then I have to be like, yeah, binaural audio has been around since the late 1800s. So, I know that if I can get it on people's heads, I can do it. But no one else does, which is why I can't get any sort of big support or major funding right now. But if I can do it long enough and I can get it to enough people, our big thing is trying to figure out how can we scale that demo that you experienced at NAMM on the internet.
Right.
How do we get that to blow up from the internet so people can see it? So my main objective right now is getting people to talk about binaural, get people to share their content. I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of customers using the product every single day. And how do we get them to share that so people understand that and it can scale? I mean, that's what we're really trying. But I appreciate it. Thank you. I would love some funding, but yes, I get
it. You're happy to be a punk, but you wouldn't mind being a punk with a wallet full of cash, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to be not dead yet. That's all I feel. Like this is, you ended today, and I've gone through a ride that most people dream of and would try to work towards. I'm thankful for every moment of it because there's no better feeling than making something great for the world. It's what I've always wanted to do. So. Yeah, that alone is its payment,
So I know this is going to seem like a poke in the eye given that you just had this product out for a short period of time, but I have to ask, what's next? Obviously you're passionate about a binaural audio. What do you do in terms of whether it's hardware or software or products of whatever sort? What's next for Hooke Audio?
Yeah, you remember how I was saying before, the Verse kind of captures what I say is like a passive VR experience. It's this immersive audio, but you're fixed to the head of the recordist when listening.
Right.
So just imagine the experience where you're not fixed. Using the same hardware in the mobile app that you have, be able to listen back to something and freely move and interact with it just from your phone. That's where we're going. Because no one wants to put on a freaking VR headset.
Right.
I'm so tired of VR headsets. There's so many other ways to be immersive without looking like a Terminator. Yeah.
Well,
so that's where we're going to push. But it's always going to be through creation. There's going to be some new hardware, but it's going to be even, like I said, binaural is the first step. The other steps are what we're going to tackle as well.
All right. Very cool. So for people that want to check out both your products as well as some of the examples, where's the best place for them to look?
So I always encourage everyone first to go to our site, www.hookeaudio.com. From there, you're going to see videos on the homepage. You'll also see a link to our YouTube. Our YouTube is very important, from demos to reviews to comparisons, all those things. And then our blog is very informative too. I write, 2 posts a week on our blog, all things spatial audio, 3D audio, all of those things. I encourage to purchase it straight through the site. And I would also like to offer a special discount to anyone listening on this. They can purchase it to get 10% off the Verse online. Can we do 10 off Darwin?
10 off Darwin it is. Yep.
10OFFDARWIN. If anyone has gotten this long through my rambling and recording, you deserve a treat. So that's what you can get for getting this. Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, Anthony, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and talking us through binaural audio a little bit, but also about your path. It was really interesting to catch a glimpse.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Darwin. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk again soon. Many thanks to Anthony for having the chat and for filling us in not only about his passion in creating binaural microphones, but also his passion about building a company and all the difficult negotiations he had along the way in order to get it going. It's really interesting stuff. I hope that you take the opportunity to go over to hookeaudio.com, check out the work that he's been doing, check out some of their examples, and learn a little bit more about what they're doing. Thanks again for listening, for tuning in this week. Thanks for sharing. Our numbers are in a really good place. Let's continue to get people involved. Also, if you could jump over to Facebook and just give the page a like. We have an art, music, technology page. It always is looking for a thumbs up now and again. So thanks again for all your help. We'll be catching you again next week. Bye.